The morning sun cast a golden glow over the small cafe nestled in the heart of a quiet town. The scent of freshly brewed coffee and warm pastries filled the air, creating an inviting atmosphere that made customers feel at home. Soft chatter and the occasional clinking of plates added to the cozy charm of the place. Behind the counter, Emma moved quickly yet gracefully, refilling coffee cups and taking orders with a gentle smile. Despite her warm demeanor, there was a tiredness in her eyes, one that came from long days and sleepless nights. She had grown used to the exhaustion, balancing her job with raising her 4-year-old daughter Lily, all on her own while her husband Daniel served overseas. The regular customers adored Emma, always greeting her with kind words and generous tips, knowing the weight she carried. But kindness wasn't something everyone shared. As the cafe door swung open, a cold gust of air followed a tall, well-dressed man inside. His sharp gaze swept across the room before he strode toward an empty table. From the moment he entered, there was an air of arrogance about him, one that hinted trouble was not far behind. The man strode into the cafe, his expensive leather shoes clicking against the wooden floor. He adjusted the cuff of his tailored suit and glanced around with an air of disapproval, his expression twisting as if the very atmosphere of the place offended him. Collins was a well-known businessman in town, wealthy, influential, and notoriously difficult to please. Emma approached his table with her usual warm smile, holding a notepad in one hand. "Good morning, sir. What can I get for you today?" Mr. Collins barely spared her a glance before sighing impatiently. "Took you long enough," he muttered. "I'll have a black coffee, extra hot, no cream, no sugar, and make it quick." Emma nodded and turned toward the counter, but before she could take another step, he spoke again. "Actually, this place could use some better lighting. It's too dim in here." He waved a hand dismissively. "And the music, too loud. It's giving me a headache." A few customers exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable with his complaints, but no one said a word. Emma returned moments later with his coffee, setting it down gently. "Here you go, sir." Mr. Collins took a sip and immediately grimaced. "This is lukewarm," he scoffed. "Do you even know how to serve a proper cup of coffee? Or is that too much to expect?" Emma swallowed back the sting of his words and kept her voice steady. "I'll bring you another one." As she turned to leave, he noticed the simple silver locket resting just above her apron. "That's a cheap little thing," he sneered. "What, a keepsake from some high school sweetheart?" Emma's fingers instinctively touched the locket, inside of which was a picture of her husband. "It's from my husband," she said quietly. Mr. Collins chuckled, shaking his head. "Ah, I see. One of those soldier wives, huh?" He leaned back in his chair. "Must be hard, raising a kid, waiting around for a man who left you behind." A hush fell over the cafe. Emma's grip on her tray tightened, but she refused to let her emotions show. Mr. Collins drummed his fingers against the table, his expression darkening with every passing second. He glanced at his watch, then let out an exaggerated sigh. "Unbelievable. How long does it take to get a simple cup of coffee around here?" Emma hurried back with a fresh cup, her hands slightly unsteady as she set it down. "Here you go, sir. I made sure it's extra hot this time." He took one sip and scoffed. "Still not right," he muttered. Then, raising his voice so the entire cafe could hear, he added, "I don't know why they bother hiring people who can't even do their job properly." A few customers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some shot Emma sympathetic glances, but no one dared to speak up. Emma took a deep breath, willing herself to stay calm. "I'm sorry if it's not to your liking, sir. I can make another one if—" "Oh, don't bother," he cut her off, waving his hand dismissively. "It's clear you can't keep up. You're just a waitress after all. Must be hard, scraping by on tips, struggling to make ends meet while your husband is off playing hero." Emma stiffened. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she forced herself to stay professional. "My husband is serving overseas," she said quietly. "I work hard so I can take care of our daughter." Mr. Collins let out a cruel chuckle. "Serving overseas? Or did he just leave for good?" He leaned forward, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Face it, he's probably not coming back." A sharp gasp rippled through the cafe. Emma felt like the air had been knocked from her lungs. Her vision blurred as she struggled to hold back tears. Across the room, her 4-year-old daughter, Lily, sat at a small table with a box of crayons, her tiny hands frozen over a half-colored picture. She looked up at her mother with wide, frightened eyes. Emma swallowed hard, forcing herself to stay strong for Lily's sake. Just then, a firm voice cut through the tension. "That's enough." The cafe's manager, a stout man with graying hair, stepped forward, his face set in a deep frown. "Sir, I need you to lower your voice or leave." The cafe was thick with tension. Mr. Collins huffed in irritation, clearly unhappy about being confronted by the manager, but before he could say another word, the front door swung open with a soft chime. The sound shouldn't have been unusual. It was just another customer arriving. But something about it made the entire cafe pause. A tall man stepped inside, dressed in a crisp military uniform, his boots scuffing against the wooden floor. He carried a small duffel bag slung over his shoulder, his posture strong and proud, yet his expression was searching, eager. For a moment, no one moved. Then a gasp escaped from Emma's lips. The coffee pot she had been holding slipped from her fingers, shattering into pieces on the floor. The world seemed to blur as her breath hitched in her throat. "Daniel?" A tiny voice broke the silence. "Daddy." Lily shot up from her seat, her crayons forgotten, and sprinted across the cafe. Her little feet pounded against the floor as she ran straight into the arms of the man she had missed for so long. Daniel dropped his duffel bag without hesitation and scooped her up, holding her tight against his chest. His strong arms wrapped around her as he buried his face in her soft curls, his body trembling. "My baby girl," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I missed you so much." Lily clung to him, her tiny hands gripping his uniform, as if afraid he might disappear again. Emma stood frozen, her body unable to move, her mind struggling to catch up with reality. This wasn't a dream. He was real. He was here. Then, as if something inside her finally broke free, she ran. She barely registered the gasps from customers as she rushed forward, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. Daniel looked up just in time to catch her. Emma threw her arms around him, holding on to him as if she'd never let go again. He wrapped her in his embrace, pressing his face into her hair. Tears streamed down Emma's cheeks as she sobbed against his shoulder. "You're home," she choked out. "You're really home." Daniel's voice was thick with emotion. "I couldn't stay away any longer." He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, his own shining with unshed tears. "I'm home for good." The cafe was utterly silent, every single person witnessing the raw, emotional reunion. Some had tears in their eyes, others simply watched in awe. Even Mr. Collins had nothing to say. The cafe remained silent, the weight of the moment lingering in the air. Daniel still held Emma close, his hand resting protectively on Lily's back. The warmth of his embrace made the months of loneliness and struggle melt away. But then a sharp cough broke the silence. Mr. Collins shifted in his seat, his face tight with discomfort. His usual arrogance wavered as he took in the scene before him. It didn't take much to realize that the man he had been ridiculing, this so-called absent husband, was a soldier, a man who had risked his life in service to his country. For the first time since entering the cafe, Mr. Collins looked uncertain. Daniel's eyes finally met his. He studied the businessman, his sharp gaze reading him in an instant. Even without knowing the full story, he could sense the tension in the air, the way Emma's body still trembled slightly, the way Lily clung to him as if she had just witnessed something awful. His jaw tightened. Collins let out a forced chuckle, adjusting the cuffs of his suit. "Well, I didn't expect a whole scene this morning." Daniel's expression remained calm, but there was steel in his voice. "Neither did I," he said. His grip on Emma loosened slightly, but his presence was unwavering. "I don't know exactly what happened before I walked in, but I can tell when someone's been mistreated." His eyes darkened. "And that's something I don't take lightly." The businessman opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, one of the regular customers, a kind elderly man who had been quietly watching, spoke up. "She didn't deserve that," he said firmly. "Emma works harder than anyone here." Another woman nodded. "She's always been kind, even to people who don't deserve it." A young man near the counter scoffed. "But I guess some people just enjoy putting others down to make themselves feel important." The murmurs of agreement grew louder. Mr. Collins's face reddened. He shifted in his seat, clearly realizing he had lost whatever power he thought he had over the situation. His arrogance faltered as he glanced around, finding no allies, no one to support his cruelty. He huffed, grabbed his coat, and stood abruptly. "This place isn't worth my time anyway," he muttered under his breath before storming out, leaving his untouched meal behind. As the door slammed shut, the cafe exhaled. For a moment, the cafe was completely silent. Then, as if someone had flipped a switch, the room erupted into applause. The sound was loud and full of warmth, filling every corner of the small cafe. Some customers clapped enthusiastically, while others wiped at their eyes, touched by the heartfelt reunion they had just witnessed. Even the manager, who had remained firm and professional just moments ago, had a soft smile on his face. Daniel, still holding Emma close, leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. "I'm home," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "For good." Emma closed her eyes, letting the words settle deep in her heart. The fear, the uncertainty, the loneliness, all of it melted away. He was here. He was really here. The cafe's manager stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Why don't you two take a seat?" he said kindly. "You've had quite the morning. Breakfast is on the house." Emma opened her mouth to protest, but before she could, another customer chimed in. "You two deserve it," the elderly man from before said with a kind smile. Another woman nodded. "Let us do something for you, just this once." Touched by their kindness, Emma finally relented. "Thank you," she murmured, blinking back tears. Daniel settled into a booth with Emma and Lily, the warmth of the cafe wrapping around them like a comforting embrace. Customers came up one by one, offering congratulations and heartfelt words. Some even wiped away tears as they spoke, moved by the beautiful reunion. Meanwhile, Lily could barely contain her excitement. She climbed onto Daniel's lap, grabbing his hands in her tiny ones. "Daddy, I have so much to show you. I drew pictures and I learned a new song and I saved all my favorite bedtime stories for when you came back." Daniel chuckled, his eyes shining as he held his daughter close. "I can't wait to see them all, sweetheart." Then, looking at Emma, he reached for her hand. "Things will be better now," he promised. "I'll never leave you two again." Emma squeezed his hand, her heart full for the first time in a long while. She didn't need words. Just this moment. Her family was whole again, and that was all that mattered. As the sun began to set, casting a warm orange glow over the quiet town, Emma, Daniel, and Lily walked hand in hand down the cobbled street. The air was cool, but the warmth of their family bond wrapped around them like a blanket. The cafe's bustling chatter, the applause, and the kindness they had received that morning slowly faded into the background, becoming a cherished memory, a reminder that love and patience always win in the end. As they walked, Emma couldn't help but glance at Daniel, her heart swelling with gratitude. The hurt from the past months seemed to melt away with every step. She no longer had to carry the burden of uncertainty alone. He was home, and together they would face whatever came next. Behind them, the cafe's door closed quietly. Mr. Collins had walked away in shame, but Emma felt no anger toward him. His cruel words no longer had power over her. With her family by her side, Emma walked forward with her head held high, her heart full. She was loved and respected, and in that moment, she knew true strength came from love, resilience, and the people who stand by us. They walked into the sunset together, unbroken, united, and stronger than ever. Thank you so much for watching this heartfelt story of love, resilience, and the strength that comes from family. Emma's journey reminds us that even in the toughest moments, kindness and patience can change everything. It's a beautiful reminder that true strength lies in the people who stand by us through it all. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with others who could use a little inspiration today. And if you haven't already, please subscribe for more emotional stories like this one. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Thank you again for watching, and we can't wait to share more incredible stories with you soon.